Good morning, and welcome to the Sunday worship service of the Unitarian Universalist Society of Schenectady. Today, as you know, is Sunday, January 28th. My paperwork says 2004. It is, I think that song came out in 2004. It is 2024. My name is LB. Any and all pronouns work for me. I'm serving as your worship associate today alongside Robyn Salvin, who is leading our final service on this month's theme of love at the center. We're grateful for your presence today, whether on Zoom or in person. If you're visiting us for the first time in either place, we offer you an especially warm welcome. We're glad that you're here. We hope that you all stay after the service for conversation and connection on Zoom that can happen right where you are. And if you're newer to this congregation, we invite you to subscribe to our weekly online newsletter circuits, which is the best way to learn about upcoming activities and opportunities. You can subscribe at the bottom of our website or contact Congregational Life Coordinator Kristin Cleveland, who will make sure you get subscribed to circuits or answer any questions that you have.
When I first started teaching 21 years ago, I was overwhelmed, as anyone in a new job would be, creating lesson plans, figuring out the layout and the culture of the school. And I have to remember all these kids' names. There's so many. Too much. Then my husband and I decided, yeah, this is a great time to start a family. And within my first 4 years of teaching, I had 2 kids. Well, let's just say there wasn't a lot of downtime. Much of my memory of that time in my life is kind of foggy. I'm sure many of you can relate. But I distinctly remember a conversation with a colleague about reading. Not just reading, but reading for pleasure. I'd always been a big reader. In middle and high school. I would stay up till all hours, reading mostly Stephen King novels. Then responsibility happened, and I just didn't have the time, or I didn't make the time. Anyway, I remember this other teacher, who was the age I am now, saying, "Oh, don't worry about it. You'll have time to read again in about 20 years. And now, about 20 years later, I've had the privilege of being able to fall back in love with books, stories, characters, settings, words. I tend to get very focused, it's a problem, I tend to get very focused on a particular author and binge their works. I've recently worked my way through all of John Grisham's legal thrillers and Ellen Hillebrand's Nantucket-based escapist stories. And currently, I'm working my way through the Quebec-based Chief Inspector Armand Gamache, a series by Louise Penny set in the fictional village of Three Pines. I heard some amens out there. I will convert you all. I'm over halfway through the series and am pretty obsessed. I love the way she writes women in particular and describes their relationships and friendships. I also love the way she writes about food. I gain 3 pounds every time she describes slathering butter on a warm baguette. Oh, it's so good. I digress. But it was this quote from her 2015 book, The Nature of the Beast, the 11th in the series, that piqued my interest. She writes, "What did falling in love do for you? Can you ever really explain it? It filled empty spaces I never knew were empty. It cured a loneliness I never knew I had. It gave me joy and freedom. And I think that was the most amazing part. I suddenly felt both embraced and freed at the same time." While the character who says this is talking about romantic love, I read the quote again in the context of loving yourself. What if the beginning of the quote were, "What did finally loving yourself do for you?" Instead of falling in love with another person, what if you fell in love with yourself? And in the context of falling in love with yourself, I'm so moved by that last line. I suddenly felt both embraced and freed at the same time. Is that possible? Is that what happens? This is the part of the reflection where you learn that I completely disregarded the adage, talk about what you know. I am not speaking about self-love from experience. I have not achieved this. One could ask whether anyone ever completely achieves this. Through a lot of work, I've been able to love certain things about myself, but general self-love is still elusive. But I think it's a journey that perhaps we can explore together and cheer each other on along the way. It will come as no surprise to any of you who know me that I often look to music for inspiration. And in this exploration of self-love, one doesn't have to look much further than one Miss Whitney Houston. I mean, her song, "The Greatest Love of All," is quite literally about loving yourself. And I quote, I'm not singing it, "Because the greatest love of all is happening to me, I've found the greatest love of all inside of me. The greatest love of all is easy to achieve. Learning to love yourself is the greatest love of all." While I will loudly and enthusiastically belt this out in my car, I do take issue with one lyric. The greatest love of all is easy to achieve. Whitney, no. If it was easy to achieve, wouldn't we all have done it? Perhaps this is true for some, but certainly not all. Certainly not me. I think one way to approach this is to remind yourself that loving yourself doesn't necessarily mean you have to like all aspects of yourself. You can still recognize places you can grow and work toward that growth. As a relatively benign example, I am a procrastinator. Want proof? Ask my students how long it takes me to grade things. I have to finish reading the whole internet before I start grading. Want more proof? I'm writing this reflection on Saturday afternoon. Yeah, yesterday. Listen, those Louise Penny books are not going to read themselves. I had things to do. Do I like this about myself? No. No, I don't. It's annoying. It's annoying to me, and it can be annoying to others. I have spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to fix this about myself, probably when I was supposed to be grading papers, but I haven't found a solution that works for me yet. Does that mean I'm a terrible person who is unworthy of my own love or the love of another person? No. It just means I've got some work to do. But we have to be careful when we're making this distinction between loving ourselves and liking everything about ourselves, that we don't revert back to just naming all the negative things that we think about ourselves. A person I've really come to admire over the last few years is Monica Lewinsky. She and I are the same age, 50, and I was in law school when the relationship she had with Bill Clinton, President Bill Clinton, was leaked, leading to impeachment hearings for him for lying about the relationship and leading to omnipresent vitriol and humiliation for her. As a society, for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe misogyny, we blamed a 22-year-old intern for her affair with the 49-year-old leader of the free world. It was honestly disgusting how she was treated. But she reemerged into the public eye in 2015 with her TED Talk, The Price of Shame. If you haven't ever watched it, do yourself the favor. It's very powerful. In it, she recalls the public humiliation she endured online and the obsession with, and how, now, with the advent of social media, society's obsession with public humiliation has only grown. She quotes Brené Brown, who studies shame, saying, shame cannot survive empathy. Shame cannot survive empathy. This was meant in the context of empathy coming from others. But what if it came from yourself? She talks about her mistake as a 22-year-old igniting shame for the next 2 decades of her life. Ms. Lewinsky acknowledges how powerful empathy from others, including strangers, was for her. And I would add that empathy towards oneself is also an important aspect of developing self-love. Think back to the story HB told earlier. We don't have to conform to what others tell us we are. Since then, Monica Lewinsky has become a forceful advocate in the anti-bullying movement. Her self-deprecating humor and brutal honesty combined to form an influencer of the most positive kind. In October of last year, she produced a public service announcement for National Bullying Prevention Month called Stand Up to Yourself, where people were filmed in a studio one-on-one with a friend or family member saying something mean-spirited, devastating, bullying to them. To say it's difficult to watch is an understatement. It becomes even that much more difficult when it is revealed that these horrendous statements aren't things that they've said to others, but are actually things the participants say to themselves. When asked if they would ever say these things to another person, they all say, absolutely not. So then why is it so easy for us to say these things to ourselves? Lewinsky refers to this as self-bullying. And on this road to self-love, this is a very possible detour. Be vigilant. Do not let yourself be lured there. Andy Grammer is a singer-songwriter who wrote in his song, Love Myself, beat myself up all the time with awful thoughts, and I can eat myself alive. I'm gonna try. It's gonna be an awkward talk, but I love you. I don't say it enough. I love who you are, who you become. Don't know why I can't hear it unless it comes from someone else, but I'm gonna find a way to finally feel it. And when we do finally feel it, we can put ourselves out there as an inspiration for others to do the same. I don't know if this is easy or difficult. Again, as someone who is still new to self-love, I don't know how this works. Do you tell people about it? Does it just exude from your pores and such that other people can sense it? Is there a vulnerability of putting your loved self out there that others won't love you back? I guess I'll leave these questions to the more enlightened. I'm not gonna lie, there was a part of me that really wanted to title this service, I Am Knuff. This is from this past summer's record-shattering blockbuster hit movie that, according to Academy Award voters, directed itself, Barbie. For those of you who don't follow the award season as rapidly as I do, Barbie was nominated for a number of Oscars, including Best Picture, but Greta Gerwig, the female director, was snubbed a Best Director nomination for this feminist movie in an irony to end all ironies. I Am Knuff is the slogan that Ken wears on his shirt at the end of the movie as he discovers that he can exist without Barbie. But I didn't end up using this title because I don't really think loving yourself is always enough. Sometimes, sure, I think it can be. But isn't it even more fulfilling to love others as well? It doesn't have to be a lot of people, or even people at all. It can be books. But this other kind of love, one that has been explored in other services this month, is important as well. So then let me ask you this. Can you love others and community without self-love? This one I do have the answer to, and I suspect you do too. The answer is yes. I know I've not gotten to that place where I am both embraced and freed at the same time by my own love of self. However, I do know that I have the capacity to love others. Self-love is not a prerequisite to loving your family and friends. It's not a prerequisite to loving your job or place of worship. It's not a prerequisite to loving your community or the earth. But is that love that is not directed at yourself as complete without self-love? Is it as authentic? Is it as vibrant? In her song Juice, Lizzo repeats the lyric, "If I'm shining, everybody's gonna shine." I kind of like looking at it that way, that self-love as the foundation for loving others can only make it more complete, authentic, vibrant, shinier. Finally, speaking of community, what can we as a community do to support others on this journey to self-love? What is our role? Well, I guess one perspective is that we have to achieve self-love on our own, that we need to do the work ourselves for it to be truly self-love. I understand that perspective. There's certainly value to being a cheerleader rather than a coach. But I believe we can be more actively helpful to others along this journey. I mean, if not, I've spent a lot of unnecessary money on therapy. Even as a huge advocate for therapy, though, I don't believe one has to be a professional to help someone achieve self-love. We can reflect back to people what we love about them and be genuine and concrete about it. We can talk about the positive impact people have had on us in meaningful ways. We can engage in real, deep, thoughtful conversation with others in a way that demonstrates that we value their ideas and who they are as people. This can build one's confidence and strength to be able to look inward and begin to value our own ideas and who we are as people. It can bring us to that place where we are embraced and freed at the same time.